Folks, it is time to rise some reds. I've been wanting to make a video talking about the Red Rising series for a while, and book number 6 comes out tomorrow, so there is no better time. Gonna do a bit of a spoiler-free overview of the series, give you guys my thoughts on it before that new one comes out, and with any luck I will convince some of you to check it out as well. A couple things before we get started. I just put out the 8th chapter of my webcomic. You can follow the link in the description to check that out. And I know I said I was going to be doing the Dresden Files video before this one, but I wanted to get this one out before Lightbringer, so we'll do Dresden Files next. So Red Rising is a science fiction epic by Pierce Brown. There are currently 5 books, about to be 6, with 7 total planned. The story takes place hundreds of years into the future after humanity has conquered the stars, the entire solar system to be precise. But humanity sort of lost its democratic ways in the process, and is now under one singular totalitarian regime: the Society. And under the Society, humanity is divided into a very strict caste system based on colors. The highest group is the Golds. These are the leaders, the politicians, the nobles, and all other colors serve them. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you have the Reds, the lowest class, who live underground on Mars, and they spend their days slaving away in the mines to produce resources for the Society. With no connection to the outside world and being fed propaganda their whole lives, they don't really know that society above ground lives in luxury. And here we meet our protagonist, Darrow of Lycos. Lycos being the colony he resides in. Darrow is a teenager, but he's already married and has a big old family because, really, your life expectancy as a Red is, extremely low, so they kind of gotta get through that stuff quick. Now, I'm not here to spoil the whole story for you, so I will just say that some events happen which result in Darrow learning about the true nature of the world and is set to be executed. This is when he is saved by a rebellion group known as the Sons of Ares, whose ultimate goal is to completely overthrow the Society and destroy the caste system. Is that how you say that word? It might be caste. I might be messing up my English here. I just won't say it again. Problem is they are small and not very powerful. So with the Golds believing Darrow is dead, they find it a perfect opportunity to take Darrow, give him a bit of a makeover, and present him as a Gold. And they give him the mission of infiltrating the Society, becoming their friend, rising in the ranks to become powerful, where he can then use his connections to supply the Sons of Ares with knowledge and power, and eventually help them achieve their goal. And Darrow is, kind of game with this because he's very, very mad at the Golds. So from there he goes to the Institute, a place where he trains to learn to become basically a warlord. And we go from there. This is a very epic space opera that spans all the planets of the solar system. It's got everything. It's got politics, it's got action, a little bit of romance in there. Friendships are formed, enemies are made, backstabbings occur extremely often, and all around, it's just one of my favorite series ever. But it took a bit of time to get to that point because I think, and most Red Rising fans would probably agree with me, that the first book is the weakest. Not to say it's bad at all. In fact, I think the first book is pretty great, but it was definitely a bit rough around the edges. This was Pierce Brown's debut. He was still learning, developing as an author, because it was a bit weird picking up this book, getting super invested in the setup, and then just realizing that it's the Hunger Games. I mentioned that institute Darrow goes to. They make him do a Hunger Games. Okay, it's not exactly the same. It's like a war. There's like different factions, and they go around this big area, and their goal is to capture territory and enslave each other and all that stuff. This whole thing, along with, the dictatorial government, even some other details that happen during the story, is very Hunger Games. But here's the thing, I say that in the best way possible, okay? The Hunger Games, love it or hate it, it was revolutionary. Basically spawned an entire genre, but that genre was for teenagers. And while there is clear Hunger Games influence in Red Rising, this is a much darker story for a much more mature audience. And I think Pierce Brown does a really good job taking this concept and sort of elevating it a bit more. But again, I just think if you're promised a super crazy sci-fi space opera epic and you just get the Hunger Games, I was enjoying it, but I'm like, all right, okay, next please. It was really Golden Sun, the second book, that kind of punched me in the gut. This is one of the sharpest increases in quality I have ever seen in a sequel, and the first book was already pretty good. Everything I was expecting from this series, all the crazy sci-fi, politics, action, this is when it sort of comes into its own, and it is absolutely glorious, and would sort of set the standard for what this series would become. These stories are crazy, man. There are constant twists. There are so many moving parts to this universe. And seeing it through the eyes of Darrow is so fascinating, because he really does not belong in this world. It goes against pretty much everything he ever knew or wanted. So there was a lot of conflict within him as he is forced to do these absolutely absurd and horrifying things, but you also understand his motivations and where he's coming from. It makes him a very, very compelling character. I don't really want to talk about any of the other characters, just because, you know, it's one of those series where anyone could die at any moment. You never know who's an enemy, who's an ally, but there are some other just absolutely fantastic characters in this story, many of whom we have seen grow throughout all of the books, and just made it an all more entertaining read. But these books are dark too. I mean, as you would expect given the subject matter. Yeah, they can be very heavy at times, okay? A lot of terrible things are obviously happening, and we're usually getting the front row seat to it all. Pierce Brown, he hates you. He does this crazy thing where he'll just take the characters you like and put them through the ringer again and again and again, and it can be devastating. Now, I recently read and reviewed The Poppy War, which was a book that I really liked, but it was a bit too bleak for my taste. And yes, the Red Rising series does often delve into that territory, describing the horrors of war. There are some very dark and messed up things happening. But I think what makes me able to stomach it more is how it's all presented. Like, there are still moments of levity in Red Rising. There is a lot of excellent witty banter and dialogue, just some really fun characters, and of course really thrilling and exciting moments. And I think all of these elements culminate in Morningstar, which at the time was the finale of the Red Rising trilogy. And I actually think this one is better than Golden Sun, which was a high bar. But it's not only because it brings everything I absolutely loved about Golden Sun, but it has one of those immaculate, perfect endings that is rare to see. The finale of Morningstar gave me sort of the opposite feelings of Golden Sun, but it was just as brilliant and so satisfying. It was so satisfying that I was kind of skeptical going into Iron Gold, because I'm like, well, here you have this immaculate masterpiece, perfect ending, and it's just gonna keep going. Thankfully, though, Pierce Brown's my guy. What happens here with Iron Gold is a huge shift. We're basically sort of hitting the reset button. We are now 10 years after the original trilogy, and not only have things changed drastically in the world, but in the way Pierce Brown is telling the story as well. As the first trilogy, we were only following Darrow. We were only seeing all of these events play out through his eyes, his perspective. But now we have multiple different POV characters from all walks of life, and from all sides of the conflicts that are going on. And this adds an insane amount of depth to a series that already had a lot of it, as we are seeing so many different perspectives on what is going on. And it just works so well to continue fleshing out the world, because this is a very massive world, and we couldn't always see the full scope of it through Darrow, but now we can. Now, as much as I appreciate all this and love how the story evolved, I don't really think Iron Gold is as good as the previous two books. And that's mostly because, while it does have some amazing moments, and I still do think this is a really good book, it still just felt more like the setup for stuff to come. Honestly, kind of like the original first book, where here we're just meeting all of our characters, setting up all the new conflicts in this new time, but it didn't really have a lot of those, you know, insane gut punches or satisfying moments that made Golden Sun and Morningstar so amazing. Thankfully, though, we got Dark Age. Dark Age. I still don't know if I can say I like this one as much as Golden Sun or Morningstar, because those books are absolutely nuts, but Dark Age is at least on that level. And it pretty much encompasses everything I love about both eras of this series. The action and the conflicts are on a whole other scale here. The character work is absolutely fantastic, and Pierce Brown continues to introduce new ways of telling these stories to keep things fresh. And Pierce continues to evolve his storytelling even more to keep keep things fresh. As, of course, Iron Gold introduces all these new perspectives, now what we are seeing is a lot of these characters are sort of converging, coming together. There are some massive battles, giant set pieces in this book where you have POV characters on either side of the conflict. And what's happening is that we are basically getting a play-by-play from each side here. And it is so fascinating. Like, all of these characters are so well defined, so well developed. You understand why they're on opposing sides. Learning about their strategies and then watching them play out from someone else's perspective is so much fun, and I absolutely love that aspect about this book. I also loved how we are sort of in this new era of the story, you know, all of the past stuff still being relevant. I mean, it was only happened 10 years ago, so a lot of things from that trilogy are now coming back, and it's just so much fun seeing how Pierce has been connecting all of these threads. Like, the series really had the perfect ending with Morningstar. That could have been it, but I am in love with the way that it has continued and how it continues to grow and develop, and I am astronomically excited for Lightbringer. I feel kind of bad because I just finished Dark Age, but most people had to wait 4 years for this new one. But yeah, Lightbringer, I'm very excited to see where the story goes. I am going to be getting through it relatively quick, I hope. And then I'll do a dedicated review of that, and I will be getting into spoilers. Like, I know I was very light on things, very vague, but that's just because I sort of want to give people a taste of what the whole series is like. So if you haven't read it and anything I said sounds interesting to you, please, you gotta check it out. It's so goddamn good. And with book number 7, which has a tentative release date for next year, we'll see about that, the series is officially going to conclude. At least I think so. But that might not be the end, as Pierce Brown has, confirmed that they are developing a TV series. One of the major streamers is working on it. We don't know who, we don't really know what's going on with it, but it's a thing that will likely happen, which is very exciting, because this is one of those books that I feel like if it became, a really good, solid TV show, it could easily be Game of Thrones level. But I'm not counting on any news soon, because, the studios still have not decided to treat their workers fairly. Alright, thanks for watching. If you've read the series, let me know your thoughts. Are you going to be picking up Lightbringer tomorrow? And I will be back soon for a new video.